They had it all figured out. They knew that if they followed this guy long enough, he'd lead them to something big. They knew if they followed him long enough that everything was going to be better. This was the Messiah, right? This was Jesus, a Nazarene, who the prophets spoke about, the Lord taught about, that God anointed, he transfigured, he did so, he healed, this guy healed the sick, raised people who've been dead for 4 days. This man had it all. They didn't know the plan. They didn't know the exact strategy, but the disciples knew that something was going to happen, and it was going to be good. It was going to be big. And every time Jesus would talk about his death, they'd be like, yeah, right, that's not going to happen. What are you talking about? Some of them even pulled the Messiah to the side and said, dude, we need to talk to you. And then it happened. The arrest, the burial, the crucifixion. Not necessarily in that order. The betrayal of one of their own. The denial of that they even believed in him. But they backpedaled and hid and ran off into hiding in their corners and dark places that nobody could find them. Because this could not be how it was supposed to end. This could not be the end. And then Sunday morning happened. And the women started talking. And they started telling strange, outlandish stories. And the disciples were confused and didn't know what to do and were befuddled and lost. Scripture's coming out. I'm going to read to you a story. It was out of Luke chapter 24. It's not a very popular resurrection story, but it's a story that happened the day Jesus rose from the dead. And it happened on a road. A road to Emmaus. Let's go ahead and read this. He says, now, on that same day, 2 of them were going to a village called Emmaus, about 7 miles from Jerusalem, and talking with each other about all these things that had happened. And while they were talking, discussing, Jesus himself came near and went with them, but their eyes were kept from recognizing him. And he said to them, what are you discussing with each other while you walk along? They stood still, looking sad. Then one of them, whose name was Cleopas, answered him and said, are you the only stranger in Jerusalem who does not know the things that have taken place there in these days? And he asked them, what things are you talking about? They replied, the things about Jesus of Nazareth, who was a prophet, mighty in deed and word before God and all the people, and how our chief priests and leaders handed him over to be condemned to death and crucified him. But we had hoped that he was the one who redeemed Israel. Yes, and besides all this, it is now the 3rd day since these things took place. Moreover, some women of our group astounded us. They were at the tomb this morning, and when they did not find his body there, they came back and told us that they had indeed seen a vision of angels who had said he was alive. Some of those who were with us went to the tomb and found it just as the women had said. They did not see him. And then he said to them, oh, how foolish you are, and slow of heart to believe all that the prophets have declared. Was it not necessary that the Messiah should suffer these things and then enter into his glory? And then beginning with Moses and all the prophets, he interpreted to them all the things about himself in all the scriptures. And as they came near to the village to which they were going, he walked ahead of as if he were going on. But they urged him strongly, saying, stay with us, because it is almost evening and the day is now nearly over. So he went in to stay with them. And when he was at the table with them, he took the bread, blessed and broke it, and gave it to them. Then their eyes were opened, and they recognized him, and he vanished from their sight. They said to each other, "Were not our hearts burning within us and while he was talking to us on the road, while he was opening the scriptures to us?" At that same hour they got up and returned to Jerusalem, and they found the 11 and their companions gathered together, and they were saying, "The Lord has risen indeed, and he has appeared to Simon." And they told what had happened on the road, and he made known to them in the breaking of the bread. It's a great story. A great tale of another resurrection appearance of Jesus. Yes, we know the story of the tomb. We know the story of the women coming to the tomb to see what happened and finding Jesus not there. We know the story of John and Peter racing to the tomb to see what's going on. And we know the story of all the main characters when all of them were gathered in the room together and Jesus just walked through walls and he was magically in the midst of them. Magically, mystically, supernaturally, whatever. Whatever is a good Christian word to throw in there. But this story shows two guys. Only one of them is given a name. Cleopas and his buddy, his friend. These two guys walking on the road. Their hopes, they don't know what's going on. They don't know what's happening. They don't understand anything. I love this story because I want to be these guys. I am one of these guys. We sit there in our journey of life. We're going through this, and how many times have you heard the phrase that life is a journey? It's a road that we walk on, that we travel down. There's an old song of how many roads must a man walk down until he's called a man. You laugh, you snicker, but it's true. Our life is a journey, and we take different roads. And this road, they were intersected with Jesus. And they didn't know what was going on. They didn't understand. And Jesus, for some reason, he shielded himself from them. I don't know why. But they had an opportunity reading the scriptures, or reading the story, that I so wish I had, where Jesus himself came down and explained everything to them. Explained it all. Talk about hermeneutics. Talk about scripture interpretation. Have God himself tell you how this was supposed to happen. But I'm jumping ahead of myself. I need to get this one in order. Because there are a lot of things that this story relates. I'm trying to figure out how this story relates to us. How does this go in our lives? When I was growing up, and life gets complicated. Amen? Life gets complicated, right? Anybody got an uncomplicated, simple life? I didn't think so. When I was growing up, and life got way complicated, there are days that I would go to a place where life was more simple and just sit there. When I was going to middle school and high school, I would go back to my elementary school when things got complicated. And I would sit in the swings or the wooden equipment that I used to be able to fit into, but then I had to contort my body to get into this place. Or I would sit on the merry-go-round or the monkey bars, and I would just say, wow, life was simple here. When I progressed to college, I started attending North Greenville, and I'd come home from summer or something, and life was complicated. Sometimes I'd go to my high school, and I'd be like, wow, life was simple here. I understood my place in the world. College got a little confusing. College gets confusing, doesn't it? It gets complicated. When I left college, and I was out in the working force, in the real world, and I was dealing with bosses and employees and coworkers and bills and taxes and how am I going to eat without going to the cafeteria? And when I get all these other things that's going on in personal relationships, I'd go back to college and I'd say, wow, life was simple here. I can understand it. Now I live in Philadelphia. I got nowhere to go back to because where things were simpler for me. It's a 13-hour drive or a 2-hour flight. Or 13-hour flight, depending on how many planes I have to take to get there. Life gets complicated. Life follows the plan. You've like, I've got it planned out. I know where it's going to go. I know what's going to happen. I've seen the end. It's going to be great. And all of a sudden, what you don't see on the end, you might be able to see the end, but you don't see the hill between, or the valley that's between the end and where you are. You're going along, all of a sudden it drops off, and it gets complicated. That's what these guys were going through. That's what these guys were headed. They were like, dude, it messed up. This is not the way it's supposed to be. The Messiah is not supposed to be dead. The Messiah is not supposed to die at all. He's supposed to be this great king that we're all supposed to follow and love and worship and be great with it. It's going to be awesome. He is the man. Wait, he's dead? That wasn't in the book. That wasn't in the scriptures the way I was taught it. That wasn't the story that it's supposed to be, not the way the rabbis told me. It's not supposed to happen this way. He's dead. What, he rose again? No. They stole his body and moved it somewhere else. So these guys were going to a place where life made sense again. Jerusalem got confusing. This past 3 years of traveling with Jesus and these other guys, it got complicated. So where were they going? Emmaus. They were going home. Home, things made sense. We could sit back and we could think about it. It's almost like they had given up. They'd thrown in the towel. They said, okay, so if this Messiah is going to die, maybe he wasn't the Messiah, let's go home and rethink things, plan things out, and find the next one. Maybe he'll be the Messiah. Can you put yourself in that position? Have you ever been in that situation where things made sense and all of a sudden they don't make sense anymore, and you just want to go back? I'm going to sit back. I'm going to go back home. I'm going to recuperate myself, put everything that I know on the table, and look at it again. And maybe the next thing that comes along is what I'm supposed to do. If you haven't done that at least once, you're definitely not in the ministry. You're definitely not you're definitely not been involved with the church as a minister. There are days as a campus minister, I'll be honest with you, I'm going to open it up. There are days that I'm sitting there and I'm looking at it and I'm saying, okay, God, things made sense. Things aren't making sense anymore. Things are crumbling down. God, you said you were going to take care of me, right? Things are not working out the way you told me they were going to work out. Can I go back where it was simple and rethink things?